Kicking off our countdown at number 10 is Mariah Carey. The two ladies have had a friendship for many years, but there was a moment in their friendship where Ellen's humor proved to go too far. The big debate with comedians is, are their jokes funny or are they actually mean? Mariah believes that this one was a bit mean, but she did handle it well despite the fact. What happened was she went on Ellen's show to do an interview, and Ellen brought up the rumors that were going around at the time that Mariah might be pregnant. Right away, Mariah says, "Let's not talk about that." But then Ellen takes out 2 glasses of champagne and tries to force her to drink it to prove that she's not pregnant. Mariah is hesitant, and it might be because she was in her early stages of pregnancy at the time, and oftentimes females don't want to reveal it because in the first trimester, miscarriages are common. Sadly, Mariah did have a miscarriage and revealed the news later down the road. I personally watched this video and I did not find it funny. I feel like forcing someone to drink alcohol to prove if they're pregnant or not, like, I get the joke, but probably not a good one, Ellen. Up next, number 9 is Dakota Johnson. Back in 2019, the actress sparked a fire on the internet after she went on the Ellen show for an interview. The two of them have had this ongoing debate on whether or not Ellen has been invited to Dakota's birthday parties. In 2018, Dakota admits that she didn't invite Ellen because she didn't know that she would want to be invited. So she invited Ellen in 2019, but Ellen didn't show up and gave no explanation. But when Dakota went on her show, Ellen called her out and said that she didn't invite her to her birthday party again. The tension was super awkward to watch, I'm not gonna lie. And Dakota says, "Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. Ask everybody. Ask Jonathan, your producer." Ellen's producer live ends up confirming that she was invited and didn't go. You can tell that Dakota was not taking Ellen's this time and was making sure that everyone knew that she was invited. Not sure why Ellen was trying to make it look like she wasn't, but the whole thing was super, super awkward. Like, I wish they could have just removed that whole part from the interview. Swiping the number 8 spot is Mark Ruffalo. You're probably wondering what the hell kind of beef he has with Ellen. It all just seems very random, not gonna lie, and it kind of is. Remember when the world went to a frenzy because Ellen was sitting with George Bush at a Dallas Cowboys game? She received a ton of hate for it, but did a monologue on her show where she said that they are friends despite their different beliefs. Like she always does, she spoke about kindness and said that she chooses to be kind to everyone. But Mark didn't agree with that and let his feelings out in a tweet. He wrote, "Sorry, until George W. Bush is brought to justice for the crimes of the Iraq War, including American-led torture, Iraqi deaths and displacement, and the deep scars, emotional and otherwise, inflicted on our military that served his folly, we can't even begin to talk about kindness." Clearly, he does not agree with Ellen's decision on who she chooses to have in her friend circle. Rolling into number 7 is Kelly Ripa. She was one half of the morning show's favorite couples. Her and Michael Strahm were co-hosting Live with Kelly and Michael from 2012 to 2016. But then Michael suddenly announced that he was leaving the show to join ABC's Good Morning America, and his relationship with Kelly began to crumble. Most hosts decided to remain neutral on the conflict, but Ellen invited him on her show, which hurt Kelly's feelings. Source said that Kelly was livid and said, I quote, "Cozying up with Michael was like telling the world she had taken his side and she was taunting Kelly." People had different opinions on the situation though. Some believe that Ellen's decision wasn't intentional, while others thought that she knew what kind of outcome would come from it. Moving on to number 6 is Kathy Griffin. Alright, so they've had drama for a while now apparently. It's been an ongoing feud and it all comes down to whose side of the story you will believe. In 2016, she published a tell-all book called Kathy Griffin Celebrity Run-Ins, My A to Z Index. In the book, she dished out dirt on about more than 100 celebrities, and Ellen was one of them. She wrote, "I'm almost positive a certain beloved daytime talk show host once had me kicked out of a backstage dressing room at the Emmy Awards. I can't prove it, but this person, who has short blonde hair, has a mean streak that all of Hollywood knows about." But Ellen denies the story and says that Kathy is the mean one. Rumors were claiming that Ellen banned her from her show, but Ellen spoke about it during the interview and said, "I didn't ban her from the show, because first you have to be on the show to be banned." Shots fired. Ellen is sassy. Halfway into our list, number 5 is Caitlyn Jenner. Back in 2015, Caitlyn went on Ellen's show and made a shocking confession, or so it seemed. During her interview, Ellen asked her what her stance was on same-sex marriage, and she said that there was a time that she did not support it. Ellen fired back at her immediately and made it seem like she wasn't supportive of the LGBTQ community. And then, after the interview, Ellen took shots at Caitlyn while talking on the Howard Stern show. She said she was unfairly passing judgment about gay people and marriage. But it turns out that that wasn't the case, and Caitlyn was not happy that she was trying to paint her in that light. Caitlyn opened up about the full story and said that she had actually talked to Ellen on the phone prior to taping the interview and convinced her to discuss her shifting stance on marriage equality. But then Ellen kind of flipped the switch on her during the interview and made it sound like she was against it. That all does seem pretty sketchy. And at number 4 is Joan Rivers. The icon has passed away and is not able to speak on her side of the story anymore, but Kathy Griffin chose to tell it, which is also one of the reasons that her and Ellen still aren't very friendly with each other. Kathy opened up to Variety and said, "One of the things that really hurt Joan, and we talked about it at our last meal together, was that Ellen always shunned her and Ellen thought she was vulgar and not funny." Apparently, despite all of their drama, Kathy still reached out to Ellen to check if she was going to do a tribute for Joan after she died in 2014, but claims said that Ellen did not want to. Kathy finished her story by saying that she wished Ellen would have celebrated her more because she has such an incredible platform, and Joan was the one who broke the glass ceiling for women talk show hosts. So she should have gave like a really nice tribute to her, is what most people believe. Coming into number 3 is Nikki Tutorials. The YouTuber went on Ellen's show for an interview earlier this year and was quick to go on the internet and start sharing how bad her experience was. Like Ellen, Nikki's also a big influence in the LGBTQ community after coming out as transgender on her channel. Before her interview, she gushed online about how excited she was to go on the show because she was a big fan of hers. But after the airing, she said that Ellen didn't even say hi to her before going on stage and said that the whole experience just felt very cold and distant. She also admitted that she didn't even have a place to go to the bathroom, claiming that the closest bathroom to her was reserved for the Jonas Brothers and that she was not allowed to use it. I feel like that's kind of illegal. Where was she going to the bathroom then? Swiping the number 2 spot is Susan Sarandon. She too did not agree with Ellen's speech about being friends with George W. Bush. When Ellen spoke about the controversy on her show, she said, "I have friends who don't think the same things that I do. When I say be kind to one another, I don't mean only the people who think the same way you do. I mean be kind to everyone." Susan tweeted a response and posted a quote from Out magazine saying, "But missing the point entirely, DeGeneres framed the issues as simply a matter of her hanging out with someone with different opinions, not a man repeatedly accused of being a war criminal." Clearly, I just think that everyone's gonna have their own opinion on that situation. If Ellen can pick and choose if she's friends with George Bush or if she's not, yeah, I feel like that everyone's gonna have a different opinion on that. And I'm gonna keep mine to myself. In the number 1 spot is Kevin T. Porter. You know things are bad when a comedian offers donations online in exchange for stories about Ellen being one of the meanest people alive. His words, not mine. That is right. Kevin tweeted out that he would donate to Los Angeles Regional Food Bank if people would share a story when Ellen was mean to them. He quickly got over 2,000 replies with people sharing stories of her being rude. He was wanting to show everyone that Ellen is not what she appears to be and thought if people could see all of these stories at once, it would help shed some light on that. He was exchanging $2 for every story, but then it got hard to tell which stories were real or not, so he just donated $600 and then attached the screenshot of his receipt. So he actually did donate the money. However, I feel like you are going above and beyond to try and expose someone for being mean. And isn't that kind of mean? Kicking off our list at number 10 is how she treats her staff. She's always had a reputation for producing a show that is filled with laughter, positive vibes, and kindness. But it turns out that this might not be the whole truth, and a source came forward saying that she treats her staff like they are her peasants. They came forward and said, when the cameras aren't rolling, she treats staffers as if they are her peasants. She doesn't even brief the staff about the show anymore. They also alleged only a few lucky people are actually allowed to talk to Ellen when working on set, or even looking her in the eye. This mystery source was very passionate about their bad experience and went as far as saying that Ellen plays favorites just to create tension and jealousy. Apparently, Ellen selects which staff to invite to fun events and then leaves the other ones in the dust. Up next, number 9 is Caitlyn Jenner felt burned by Ellen. Back in 2015, Caitlyn made a shocking confession while doing an interview on her show, saying that there was a time she didn't support same-sex marriage. She was asked about her stance on it, and she said, "At first, I was not for it." Ellen was offended and took shots at Caitlyn while talking on the Howard Stern show. She said she was unfairly passing judgment about gay people and marriage. Maybe she didn't want to dance with me on the show because I'm lesbian. But Caitlyn was quick to set the story straight and didn't like Ellen's untrue response. She expressed that she talked to Ellen on the phone prior to the interview taping and convinced her to discuss her shifting stance on marriage equality. But then Ellen kind of flipped the switch on her during the interview and made it sound like she was against same-sex marriage. But apparently she's not. And apparently Ellen never even asked her to dance, and she said she would have loved to dance with Ellen. Who doesn't want to dance with Ellen? Making our way to number 8 is the time that she defended Kevin Hart over a homophobic tweet. She angered a lot of her fans back in 2019 after she interviewed the comedian when he stepped down from being the Oscar host that year. If you missed all of that drama, he was asked to host the Oscar until homophobic tweets from his past resurfaced, and the only way that they would let him host is if he apologized for it. He ended up stepping down from the host position and refused to apologize because he already apologized for them in the past. One of the tweets from 2011 was a joke about what he would do if he caught his son playing with a dollhouse. He tweeted, "I'd beak it over his head and say, 'Stop, that's gay.'" But he refused to apologize, and Ellen actually brought him on her show and supported his decision to step down. She called the people attacking him about his tweets haters and actually encouraged him to not let it destroy him. It comes across very hypocritical, especially after the whole Caitlyn Jenner story I just told you. Like, you were mad at her for not agreeing with same-sex marriage, but this guy straight up posted a homophobic tweet and you're in support. I get that it's not coming across in the right way. Sliding into the number 7 spot is she did not support a writer's strike. Back in 2007, there was a writer's strike and Ellen carried on with the show anyways. She respected the picket lines for one day, but then returned to the studio the following day. She claims that she didn't have to actually follow the legal actions required, and when she filmed the next day, she said, "I love my writers, and in honor of them, I'm not gonna do a monologue." She felt that it was enough to give up the monologue part of her show, but the truth is, she was not supposed to create new episodes at all. The union condemned the decision to move forward and wrote in a statement that Ellen was not welcome in New York, where the show was scheduled to film in a few weeks' time. The Writers Guild of America wrote, "It's sad that Ellen couldn't even stand by writers for more than one day. Writers who have helped make her extremely successful. I'll love your show, but you can't just make a show when there's a writer's strike." Coming to the number 6 spot is she was sued for making fun of a woman's name. It was a very weird lawsuit back in 2016 when a Georgia-based real estate agent named T.T. Pierce sued Ellen for making a joke about her name. It happened during her "What's Wrong with These Ads and Signs" segment when she joked and called her Titty instead of TT. In the lawsuit, Pierce pointed out that Ellen knew her name was pronounced TT and that she faced harassment following the episode. The case was ultimately thrown out, and the judge said that the letter I in the English language can be pronounced several ways. This one will kind of depend on whose side of the story you believe. Ellen's producers did say they never intended to hurt anyone's feelings, but many people believe that Ellen knew that she was just making fun of her on purpose, obviously for the joke of the segment. Halfway through, we have the time she made Corinne Olympius uncomfortable. She was another celebrity who guest appeared on Ellen's show and went on to say that the experience wasn't so nice. She talked about it while speaking on The Morning Breath in 2017 when she was asked if the rumors were true about Ellen being a diva behind the scenes. She admitted that the show isn't what it seems to be and that there's truth that people don't get to see from Ellen. She kept things pretty vague, but said that she felt uncomfortable when talking to her. She said that before the taping, she was super excited because she was a big fan of her, obviously, and said it felt like she'd be talking to Dory from Finding Nemo, like the lovable goofy blue fish, played by Ellen. But the experience was different for her, and she said, "I've kept this in for so long, but to be honest, Ellen just made me a little uncomfortable." And for obvious reasons, Ellen denied these claims. Well, to be honest, she just didn't really comment on it altogether. Kind of like an eye roll thing to this whole story. We're at number 4 now, and we have the inappropriate comment about Katy Perry's breasts. Ellen swears that her heart and mind were in the right place when she tweeted out a birthday message for Katy saying, "Happy birthday, Katy, it's time to bring out the big balloons." But it was followed by an image of Ellen with her wife staring at Katy's breasts. The picture was obviously a joke. Both Katy and Ellen's wife are both laughing in it, but fans were not impressed and they actually started a trending hashtag double standard. People weren't impressed, even fellow celebrities joined in on the hashtag. Piers Morgan tweeted, "If a man made this joke, Ellen would lead the cries of sexist pig." People actually claimed that her tweet contradicted her Me Too monologue where she criticized sexual harassment and said it is not a male or female thing. Of course, Ellen is a comedian and said that the tweet was just meant as a joke. Taking over the 3rd spot is when she made Kathy Griffin cry. I feel like that is not an easy thing to accomplish. In 2016, she published a tell-all book called Kathy Griffin Celebrity Run-Ins, My A to Z Index. In the book, she dished some dirt about more than 100 celebrities, and Ellen was one of them. She wrote, "I'm almost positive a certain beloved daytime talk show host once had me kicked out of a backstage dressing room at the Emmy Awards. I can't prove it, but this person who has short blonde hair has a mean streak that all of Hollywood knows about." But Ellen said that it's not true, so you kind of have to judge if she is lying or not. Ellen said her piece on the situation and called Kathy very mean. She said, "She did a whole thing that I banned her from the show. I didn't ban her from the show because first, you have to be on the show to be banned." I'm interested to know, who do you believe? Do you believe Kathy Griffin? Do you believe Ellen? I want to know. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Taking over the number 2 spot is her charity led to an IRS nightmare. One thing she's known for on her show is all the generous gifts and donations that she gives to people in need. In 2013, she helped a woman named Shonda Fields after she lost her job as a substitute teacher. She gave her whole family approximately $55,000 to help everyone, and of course, they were overjoyed. But later on, tax collectors in Ohio threatened her with jail time for failing to pay $1,700 in taxes for the non-employee compensation awarded to her by The Ellen Show. She ended up having to pay a fine, and fans were actually shocked to hear about it. For some reason, people started coming at Ellen and her team, saying that it's not fair to award people large sums of money that they're gonna have to pay taxes on. Some people said that she lies about the fine print when she gives away all of these prizes on her show, and that they really aren't what they seem to be. I actually have a small fun fact for you. My friend got on The Ellen Show as a nurse, as a guest, and she got to play one of those games and actually won a prize. And she did get her 2 TVs and her check for $20,000. So all I gotta say is, it might be true. There might be some truth to these prizes. In the number 1 spot is Nikki Tutorials. The YouTuber recently went on Ellen's show for an interview and later spoke about her bad experience. Similar to Ellen, Nikki is a big influence in the LGBTQ community after coming out as transgender. And before her interview, she gushed online about how excited she was, only to admit that the experience wasn't what she thought it would be. She said that Ellen didn't even say hi to her before going on stage and said the experience was just cold and distant. She also admitted that she didn't even have a place to go to the bathroom. Is that even legal? Nikki explained and said, "Every guest at Ellen had a private toilet, but I didn't. I couldn't even use the closest toilet to me because it was reserved for the Jonas Brothers. They were allowed, but I wasn't. Even looking back though, my interview got 8 million views and theirs only got 2 million. Ha! Of course, Ellen is saying that these claims are not true. I don't know if she's lying. I don't know who to believe.
In at number 10, embarrassed her own audience. Now, not all of these reasons for Ellen's career falling apart have happened recently. In 2017, Ellen was beloved by everyone, but some started to view her in a more negative light when she embarrassed one of her audience members live on TV. Ellen had set up a table with cheap gift bags and had her team put in a hidden camera. When one of the guests grabbed an extra bag for a family member that couldn't make it to the taping, Ellen just put her on blast.
I like that you like the product so much that you wanted to bring one back for your sister. But now when you go like to Costco or
The worst part is that Ellen embarrassed her in front of the entire studio audience as well as everyone watching at home. All she could do is just laugh along with everyone else in this very awkward televised moment. It's very lazy of her to just embarrass her own audience for a game, and everyone saw right through it. In at number 9, she exposed Mariah Carey. Back in 2008 when Mariah Carey came onto The Ellen Show, there had been rumors circulating that Mariah may be pregnant. However, instead of respecting her wishes to not mention these rumors or further speculate, Ellen forced her to address it.
I'm not going to ask you if you're pregnant or not.
This is peer pressure. Do you see what Ellen is doing? This is peer pressure.
No. Let's toast to you not being pregnant if you're not pregnant.
You see, Ellen wanted to be the first one to break this story of Mariah's pregnancy, and to do so she brought out alcohol to force a confession. Now, clearly if Mariah was pregnant, having alcohol would be a terrible idea, but why does Ellen feel like she's in charge of this information in the first place? Despite all of Mariah's refusing to take part in Ellen's game, she was eventually backed into a corner. She then takes a small sip from the glass that prompts Ellen to start shouting that Mariah is pregnant. Sadly, Mariah Carey would have a miscarriage just a few weeks later. Good job, Ellen. In at number 8, rude to YouTubers. Most of the time, Ellen fawns over celebrities, but it's rarely celebrities that come from any other realm than Hollywood. For example, when she had YouTuber Nikki Tutorials on the show, she was treated far worse than any of the other guests. The makeup guru said that her appearance on The Ellen Show has reminded her to never meet her idols. Upon arriving on set, Nikki recalled that Ellen didn't even say hello to her, adding, "Call me naive, but I kind of expected to be welcomed with confetti cannons, welcome to the Ellen DeGeneres show, but instead I was greeted by an angry intern who was a bit overworked," which actually brings us to our next point. In at number 7, strange rules for her staff. When Kevin Porter tweeted out, "Right now we all need a little kindness, you know, like Ellen DeGeneres always talks about. She's also notoriously one of the meanest people alive. Respond to this with the most insane stories you've heard about Ellen being mean and I'll match everyone with $2 to the LA Food Bank." And the responses were overwhelming. However, for this point, let's focus in on the ones about the bizarre rules for her staff. Benjamin Simeon said, "A, she has a sensitive nose, so everyone must chew gum from a bowl outside of her office before talking to her, and if she thinks you smell that day, you have to go home and shower." You have to go home and shower? Who does that? What a weird power move. You smell, so stop working, go home, shower, and then come back and stay late. Chelsea Babcock then said, "When I was working on At Midnight, our stage manager told us to never work for Ellen. He told us that she had signs up in her office that say, 'Do not look the host in the eye.'" I'm sorry, but that's far from normal. Don't look her in the eye? That's just a bizarre rule to have. In at number 6, she bailed on her staff. When the pandemic shut down all of the studios in Hollywood, Ellen was faced with a tough choice. She has spoken about how much she loves and appreciates her staff, so you would think that in these difficult times that she would have at least kept them in the loop. The core stage crew though for the show had a staff of more than 30 employees, yet they received no written communication about the status of their working hours, pay, or inquiries about their mental and physical health from producers for over a month. Then when they finally were notified, nearly all crew members were told to brace for a 60% reduction in pay, even as the show continued to air from Ellen's home. The worst part is that she hired a non-union crew to replace the staff she apparently cared so much for. Oh, and then she said her mansion felt like jail.
One thing that I've learned from being in quarantine is that people, this is like being in jail, is what it is.
Hashtag never forget. Never forget that she said her mansion felt like a jail cell. In at number 5, rude to regular people. Going back to that original tweet from Kevin Porter for a moment here, a lot of people who didn't work for Ellen but had interactions with her otherwise also popped into the conversation. A.D. Rose said, "My friend waited on her and she threw a plate of salmon in his face because it wasn't what she ordered." That one seems like pretty wild, right? But when you read on, there's several more servers and wait staff that have also complained about her. Take Chris Farah for example. She said, "I worked at Real Food Daily and served her and Portia at brunch. She wrote a letter to the owner and complained about my chipped nail polish. Not that it was on her plate, but that it was just on my hand. I had worked till closing the night before and this was next morning. Almost got me fired." She tried to have this woman fired because she had chipped nail polish. I'm sorry, but if that makes you so mad that you have to sit down and write a letter, you need anger management classes. In at number 4, she was caught lying. When Dakota Johnson came on the show, we really got to see that Ellen is not afraid to lie right to someone's face. She said happy belated birthday a month after Dakota's birthday, like, at that point, why even televise how forgetful you are? Then following that awkward moment, she starts digging into Johnson about not being invited to her birthday again, which leads to Dakota calling her out on that lie.
Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. You were invited. Last time I was on the show, last year, you gave me a bunch of about not inviting you, but I didn't even know you wanted to be invited.
Pretty nuts that she was rude to her the last time she was on the show and then again right when she came back. She even insisted that she was never invited just to cover up that she was out of town hanging out with President Bush. Speaking of, in at number 3, friends with enemies. Ellen hanging out with President George W. Bush really was the breaking point for a lot of her fans. Ellen has been a strong advocate for gay marriage, and so when she buddies up to a president who has advocated against this for his entire time in office, it's a little gross to see. CJ writes, Laura and George Bush sitting with Ellen and Portia is not something I expected to see at an NFL game. You and everyone else, CJ. Ellen trying to play this off as simply two people with differing opinions hanging out and setting aside their differences. That might be true for regular people, but for two individuals that hold a position of power, we expect a little more. I said it before, but I'll drop his name again. Walker Bregman said it the best. Walker tweeted, "Here's the thing, Ellen. George W. Bush is a war criminal who is responsible for death on a cataclysmic scale. It's not a matter of being friends with people with different beliefs. We all have those friends. It's about having a little perspective on the damage that he's done." In at number 2, mean to people with disabilities. So not only has Ellen had a mean streak with guests, celebrities, and even her own audience, turns out she's especially not a fan of people with disabilities. Within the Kevin Porter tweet, Josh Levesque replied with this: "A friend of mine told me about a custodian she knew who was fired because he was slightly autistic and forgot that he wasn't allowed to look at or speak to her, and he loved greeting everyone." Now, not on Ellen's watch. I mean, rules are rules, buddy. I don't care if you're autistic, what disability you have. You look Ellen in the eyes and you're out. Just the rules of the Ellen Show. Then there was this heartbreaking one. Lindsay Jamba tweeted, "My brother is a Make-A-Wish kid. His wish was to be at the 12 Days of Ellen, which was arranged 1 month before they canceled because Ellen refuses to interact with disabled people." Crushed his heart. That's messed up and something that any person just can't ignore, whether you're a fan of hers or not. Last but certainly not least, on our number 1 spot, refused to honor Joan Rivers. Whether Ellen wants to believe it or not, Joan Rivers paved the way, especially for female comedians who wanted to break into the mainly male-dominated world. Joan Rivers did so much in the world of entertainment, so when she passed away, it was upsetting for a lot of people. Most late-night shows did tributes to remember Joan, but Ellen did not. Now, Brett Hawkins tweeted this out, and it makes a lot of sense as to why she refused to honor Joan. Kathy Griffin said that when Joan Rivers died, Ellen staunchly refused to do a tribute to her because her comedy and Kathy's were the wrong kind, too mean-spirited. Then he goes on to say that how we love a pious comic. What's worse to realize after reading that tweet is the fact that sometimes the people who claim to be nice are actually very mean behind closed doors. They use this image of being a philanthropist and kind person to mask the demons that they're trying to keep under wraps. Ellen is one of them. And Marlene's pointing at me too. In at number 10, unconventional childhood. Growing up, Ellen didn't really have a typical upbringing because her parents full-on believed in Christian Science. They essentially used the word of the Bible as their guide to eternal life, which includes how they take care of people when they're sick. It was a system of belief that caused Ellen a lot of physical and emotional pain in her life. The worst part of her childhood was that her parents actually never took her to see a doctor, nor did they give her any medicine when she was feeling ill. Now, I'm sure most of her fans would accept Ellen's Christian Science past, but others may feel alienated by it, so she keeps it pretty under wraps. As a result of being raised in a Christian Science household, Ellen was never even vaccinated as a child. Another secret she doesn't want you to know about. In at number 9, she's a terrible boss. When the pandemic shut down the world, the wealthy among us had a moral choice to make. If you owned a business, do you then give from what you have to keep your employees paid? In Ellen's case, she had a tight-knit and dedicated crew that outlasted a writer's strike and still stuck by her afterwards. Yet when they needed her help, Ellen and her net worth of $400 million said nope. What's worse is that she hired a non-union crew instead to run her show from home. So you force them not to unionize and then turn around and show them exactly why they should have. The backlash comes after Variety reported that Ellen's staff were given no information and entirely left in the dark after filming for the show stopped in March. Oh, and then she said her mansion felt like jail.
One thing that I've learned from being in quarantine is that people, this is like being in jail.
By the way, that's a $27 million mansion. Feels like jail. In at number 8, not welcome in NYC. When the writer's strike kicked off in 2007, Ellen found herself in a strange situation. Because she also writes for the show, she's a fully paid member of the Writers Guild of America. So when the Writers Guild of America went on a strike that lasted from November 2007 to February 2008, she was forced with a tough decision. Does she support her fellow writers or cross the picket line and go to work? DeGeneres showed her support for the strike, but on November 9, 2007, 9 days into the strike, she revealed that she would be crossing the picket line. The strike is believed believed to have costed the Los Angeles entertainment industry over $1 billion in revenue. Following Ellen's decision, the show ran as usual, just without the opening monologue. Unfortunately for Ellen, the Writers Guild of America were furious. They even said that she was not welcome in New York City anymore. In at number 7, she has a mean streak. In Kathy Griffin's new book, Celebrity Run-Ins: My A to Z Index, she said, "I'm almost positive a certain beloved daytime talk show host once had me kicked out of a backstage dressing room at the Emmys Awards." She then goes on to say, "I can prove it, but this person who has short blonde hair has a mean streak that all of Hollywood knows about." And I don't think she's talking about James Corden. According to former employees of Ellen's show, this mean streak theory holds up. One insider said, "She's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. She's so nice to celebrities, but Ellen's demands that junior staffers don't speak to her, touch her, or even look at her." Turns out she's just rude to most people when the cameras are turned off. In at number 6, Ellen Not So Generous. In May of 2019, Ellen had country star Blake Shelton on the show and, among other questions, repeatedly brought up his relationship with Gwen Stefani. She then even gifted him with a large clock of the pair kissing that was supposed to encourage them to get married, the clock being a reminder that time is, well, ticking. Well, when he came back on the show in December of 2019, and other than him being embarrassed by, again, Ellen asking more questions about his personal relationship, we found out that he actually never received the clock. And Blake took full advantage of his time on the show to expose Ellen for not actually giving these gifts to her guests, but instead recycling them whenever she wanted. In at number 5, Lies for Good TV. When Dakota Johnson came on the show, we really got to see that Ellen is not afraid to lie if it makes for good television. First and foremost, she said happy belated birthday, then asked how it was because she didn't get an invite, which leads to Dakota calling her out on that lie. I just can't believe that on top of that, she also was rude to her the last time that she was on the show. Why would you want to come back after that? Now, either she's really forgetful or has lied so many times that she just can't keep track of it, because the next part of that interview was confusing to say the least. She then insists that she was never invited and even turns to her producer to clarify that there was no invitation. Her producer then says, "You were invited, but you were out of town at that thing." And then the plot thickens because that thing is coming up next. In at number 4, Fame Over Values. So not only did Ellen lie about not getting a birthday invitation to Dakota Johnson's party, but that thing that she was doing out of town was even tweeted by her. She says, "Yes, that was me at the Cowboys game with George Bush over the weekend." Ellen was then blasted on Twitter for hanging out with former Republican President George W. Bush. Bush was the president for 8 years and fought against gay marriage. He even wanted to make a constitutional amendment in 2004 that would define marriage as a union of a man and a woman. I believe Walker had the best take on this, though. He said, "Here's the thing, Ellen. George W. Bush is a war criminal who is responsible for death on a cataclysmic scale. It's not a matter of being friends with people with different beliefs. We all have those friends. It's about having a little perspective on the damage that he's done." Well said. In at number 3, publicity stunts. In a bizarre turn of events, in order to distract from the negative attention that attending a football game with a war criminal brings, Ellen just kissed Howard Stern. While on the show, Stern made note about how under fire she was over the George Bush photo. He then explains that he's on her side and that booking him was a great idea. Howard then suggests that if the pair were to kiss on television, it would switch the focus to them. The really hilarious part about all of this is just how open they are with it. Anyone with a brain can see that she's creating these publicity stunts to drum up controversy and get more name recognition. However, if you were to ask Ellen, she would never admit that it was all just a cover-up to hide her mistakes. In at number 2, took money from school kids. In 1984, California voters approved the state lottery with an understanding that 34% of sales revenue would go towards education. However, in December, the company just gave Ellen a ton of scratch tickets to just give away to her audience. In fact, each audience member received a $500 bundle of scratchers tickets from the California State Lottery. Now, of course, they both saw this as a publicity boom, but a whistleblower from inside the company suggesting that it was a misuse of funds. The total face value for these tickets was just over $200,000, and by just giving away these lottery tickets on her show, Ellen and the lottery company should be held responsible for that loss. The weird thing is that they even mentioned how the revenue from the tickets goes towards education in Los Angeles. Then she just turns around and accepts the gift with no money exchanged to the charity. Last but certainly not least, in our number 1 spot, Porsha moved out. There have always been rumors that Ellen and Porsha's marriage wasn't actually going well, and speculation would rise every time Ellen was seen not wearing her wedding ring. Although once being locked down in quarantine with each other and Ellen coming under attack recently for so many things, Porsha has officially moved out. Instead of living in the home that they purchased together in LA when they got married, an insider source said that Portia has been living in Montecito Heights for weeks. The source went on to say Ellen tries to appease her by giving her whatever she wants, like her art company and buying any home Portia falls in love with. However, some time apart will do them good. They love each other so much, so I don't think they're about to give up on their marriage just yet. In at number 10, early fame. James Corden revealed that he had to actually have therapy to stop being a brat after he became intoxicated by fame for the first time. Even his Gavin and Stacey co-star Rob Brydon had to step in and tell him off for his rude behavior while on set. Rob recalls saying, "Look, this is a bit awkward to say, but I'm just hearing these things about you, and you've got to know that the way you behave has an effect on people." Which is bizarre because the whole reason that he wrote this show for himself to, star in was because that he was sick and tired of people being rude to him over his weight and many other things. So to just turn around and be rude didn't really make sense. In at number 9, fake driving. Once transitioning from comedic actor to late night host, James had to come up with some new games that would keep his audience interested. It's a simple concept, but something that is at the very least relatable to most audiences. Other than having a giant celebrity in your passenger seat, that is. Well, it turns out that the whole thing is a sham and a cheap way to trick their audience. A tweet went viral showing that James Corden doesn't actually drive the vehicle during the show, but rather has it being pulled around on a trailer.
They're doing carpool karaoke.
That is so funny.
Hey, Bieber. Justin Bieber.
Oh my god.
And James Corden.
Ah, that's so great.
In at number 8, Fight Club.
The second rule of Late Late Show Fight Club is
James, the first and the second rule of Late Late Show Fight Club is I am not doing Late Late Show Fight Club. Okay?
Even though James Corden had an excellent opportunity to chat with Edward Norton, he ruined that chance by trying to do some weak comedic version of Fight Club, using his own writing staff. Right from the start, you can tell that Ed just doesn't want any part of this, and why would he? Fight Club was a great film, but it's one of the many that the actor has been a part of. Plus, he was there trying to promote a new movie, so why waste time on something like this? Although James still isn't getting it until Norton tells him that there are better ways of expressing masculinity. All the guy wants to do is talk about his film Motherless Brooklyn, which he not only starred in but also directed and wrote. But no, James wants a Fight Club parody sketch. Okay, what a waste of a guest. In at number 7, against his writers. When James Corden decided to do an Ask Me Anything on Reddit, it could not have backfired any worse. One of his producers named Jack Allison had made a tweet in regards to how poorly James had treated his writing staff, which was included in the litany of complaints made against the host. Jack tweeted, "I'd like to state once again for the record that I went to a WGA meeting for only late night writers, and James Corden showed up without any of his staffers to advocate for a lower pay grade for late night writers." Now, James tried to refute his point, but honestly, his Twitter replies aren't even worth showing here. He basically called his own producer a liar and stated that he cared about his writers while simultaneously arguing for lower pay at the Writers Guild of America meeting. In at number 6, distracted hosting. While hosting the Glamour Woman of the Year Awards, James got himself into a now famous argument with Patrick Stewart. Apparently, while hosting, he looked completely disinterested, and many felt that he gave off an attitude like he was better than the event. Plus, while recipients were accepting their awards, there was James just standing off to the side texting during a live award show. So when Patrick Stewart came on stage, he decided to confront James over his rude behavior. But because some people hadn't noticed what James was doing, Patrick seemed to be the rude one in this interaction. Although in retrospect, he was a hero ahead of his time. Take a look at this awkward exchange and keep in mind that this was 10 years ago.
No, seriously, go on.
Okay.
No, go on. You can see my belly, and we can all see you dying right now. Let's go for it. Here we go.
Patrick was simply trying to tell James not to text while people are accepting their awards, and instead of apologizing, he got in Patrick Stewart's face. Like, what was he gonna do? Fight him? Because he asked you to have common sense? Bit rude? In at number 5, unrelatable. James Corden decided it was his duty to stand up for every overweight person in the world in defending their right to eat when Bill Maher said that we should bring back fat shaming. And judging by the way Corden responded to this clip, you would think that Bill called him out specifically. He didn't though. James is just that easily offended and has a bigger platform to cry on than most people. The point Bill was trying to make was a comedic one that missed the mark, but he was emphasizing that America needs to bring back shame, which it does. We should all have a little bit of shame, in fact. James tried to make this his champion moment of being the king of all that is good in the world, but started to lose people when he continuously made it about himself. He kept saying, "This hurt me because I wanted to be in movie roles but was too out of shape. His remarks hurt me because I was never accepted by society." But there he is, sitting behind a late night show desk, no problem. Also, in my humble opinion, if he didn't feel some shame about the way that he looked, James would have probably never been motivated enough to create his own show, Gavin and Stacey. He's trying too hard to be a fake idol by making his audience believe that he's offended by remarks that have nothing to do with him. Literally nothing to do with him. In at number 4, joked about assault. Right around the time that people like Rose McGowan and other accusers started stepping up and calling out Harvey Weinstein for his egregious behavior, James thought it would be fun to joke about it. Due to James Corden being a comedic actor and not a stand-up comedian, his jokes had absolutely no legs or timing. As a result, the audiences mostly groaned uncomfortably about the extremely graphic and too soon material that was clearly not well suited for a charity event. After the immense backlash, James tweeted, "To be clear, sexual assault is no laughing matter. I was not trying to make light of Harvey's inexcusable behavior, but to shame him, the abuser, not his victims. I am truly sorry for anyone offended. That was never my intention." Oh, so now shaming is okay, just as long as it's not happening to you. Another Italian actor named Asia Argento, who alleges that Weinstein sexually assaulted her when she was 21, tweeted a video of Corden's joke and added the caption, "Shame on this pig and everyone who grunted with him." I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. In number 3, political harassment. While filming a segment on his show called Spill Your Guts, James was asked a very specific question about what happened when he saw Ivanka Trump at a wedding. James admitted that he was very drunk and continuously harassed the president's daughter at the wedding. He repeatedly told her that she needs to do something, which isn't exactly the place nor the time. Plus, who does James Corden think he is? He wasn't born in America. He came there so that he could make more money. So why does he feel this entitlement to trash the country that accepted him? Plus, harassing the president's daughter while at a wedding, while drunk, is perhaps the biggest indicator that James has no self-awareness.
But I remember that we were quite drunk and we started going, "Ivanka, you can do something. You can make a difference." I remember Ivanka was going, "I'm trying."
In at number 2, hates his fans. Going back to that disastrous Reddit Ask Me Anything post that he made, we have countless people who were once fans of James claiming negative interactions with the host. One Redditor mentioned the time that he saw James Corden filming the UK game show A League of Their Own, and while other stars were polite and engaged with fans, Corden couldn't have cared less. It's a bit of a long post, so I'll just point out the most egregious examples. The Redditor writes, "James came in for a brief moment, someone asked politely for a quick picture, and he abruptly said later, and then left to his changing room for the rest of the night," which means they never got the photo. Then they closed it off by saying, "Seeing him like that made me realize everything you see of his on TV is a complete persona, and really his natural personality is just a complete self-entitled," and that's a word that I'm not allowed to say on YouTube. So, but you get the point. You get the point. I'm not gonna say that word. It's a bad one. Last but certainly not least, on our number 1 spot, Happy Mother's Day. Then there was this crazy airplane story involving a woman and a baby. There's for sure no way to verify whether or not the story is true, but it does seem pretty much in line with what others have been saying about the late night host. Apparently, a woman with her crying baby was sat next to James Corden on a flight, but to many people's surprise, James didn't complain. He simply put in his noise-canceling headphones and pulled a mask over his eyes, then turned away from the woman to sleep. However, when the plane landed, Corden remained in his seat as the woman with the baby struggled to open her overhead compartment. What makes the story even worse is that the woman then turned to James and asked him to at least hold the baby while she was getting the bags down. Turns out that woman was his wife, and that baby was his baby.
At number 10, Bill Maher. I'm sure we are all familiar with how outspoken Bill Maher is. He said some things in the past that people have no doubt taken offense to, but after one comment that he made, it seems as though he's made an enemy with James Corden, and now they just don't like each other. Back in 2019, Bill made some offensive comments about weight, where he said, quote, "Fat shaming doesn't need to end, it needs to make a comeback. Some amount of shame is good. Shame is the first step in reform," end quote. When James saw this, he took the first 8 minutes of his Late Show episode to discuss the comments that Bill made, where he said, quote, "So I sat at home and I'm watching this and all I could think of was like, oh man, somebody needs to say something about this. If only there was someone with a platform who knew what it was really like to be overweight, and then I realized, oh, that's me. There's a common and insulting misconception that fat people are stupid and lazy, and we're not," end quote. Bill later responded to James's criticisms of his comments, essentially telling him that he was wrong to not shame people for for their appearance, but he was pretty heated. People often have opposing views, but it looks like this is a feud that they won't really come out of. At number 9, Jack Allison. Jack Allison is a member of the Writers Guild of America and used to write for Jimmy Kimmel's show back in the day, so he knows his way around late night TV. So when he found out about the shady things that James was doing on his show, he had to call him out for it, and it was not pretty. According to Jack, he went to a WGA meeting for late night writers, and James showed up to said meeting to advocate for a lower pay grade for late night writers. Doesn't really sound like something to advocate for, since it's affecting people's livelihoods, right? Jack alleged that since James showed up to the meeting without any other staffers from his show, that James made that trip to the meeting just for this request. Jack also alleged that James wanted to hire writers' assistants for 13-week periods so that he didn't have to pay them as much as a full-time contractor. He didn't think that this was fair at all, and so he decided to expose James on Twitter. James fired back online saying that this was all untrue, but Jack stuck to his story. I guess he really had it out for James because of how unfairly he wanted to treat his staff, and honestly, I can't blame him. Now before I carry on with this list, I would like to take a moment to ask you guys to consider leaving a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, because it really does help the channel out and we appreciate your support. At number 8, Ricky Gervais. It's a common thing for comedians to take jabs at other comedians. It's really just part of the culture of comedy, but I feel like when it comes to Ricky Gervais and James Corden, the jabs that he makes aren't just for laughs, but there's actual hate fueling them as well. Even though they both rose to fame in similar ways, both getting their start on British television, then making their way into movies and hosting, Ricky still seems to have a distaste for James, and he makes that apparent at every moment he can by making jokes about the late night TV host. This first started back in 2009 when James portrayed Ricky on his show. I guess Ricky wasn't a fan of the way that he was played on TV because since then, he's been a little hostile towards James. One source commented on Ricky's feelings towards James when they said, quote, "Ricky is now somewhat obsessed, attacking James when his jokes fall flat and poking fun of his size," end quote. In recent years, Ricky has also made a few jabs at Corden's jokes about Harvey Weinstein as well as James's role in the movie Cats. At number 7, Ricky Whittle. Actor Ricky Whittle, best known for his roles on The 100 and American Gods, isn't a fan of James Corden after he called the late night host out for comments that he made about a show that the two of them had once starred in. Ricky used to be on a British soap opera called Hollyoaks, and back in 2000, James was a guest star on one of the episodes. Years later, when asked about his time on the show, James had nothing positive to say about it. He told sources about his experience on the show saying, quote, "I'd actually rather die than go back. It's effing awful. It just breeds all these people walking around in this chicken in a basket fame, talking about going to LA, you know?" End quote. Ricky did not appreciate the shade that James threw at the show that gave them both their start, and so he clapped back at James where he said, quote, "It's very childish that he's slating the place where he came from, the place that made him. Good luck to him. I hope he doesn't bump into us on a night out." End quote. I think it's safe to say that Ricky is not a fan at all. At number 6, Artie Lang. Comedian Artie Lang seems to have a lot to say about a handful of Hollywood stars, especially those who have been associated with Howard Stern. Artie and Howard once worked together when he served as something of a sidekick to Stern on the Howard Stern Show back in 2001 to 2009, but he was forced to leave the show due to his substance abuse issues. It seems like the comedian carried that grudge with him for a long time because he really doesn't have anything nice to say about Howard or anyone else that he's worked with. For example, James Corden. Back in 2016, during Artie's podcast called Artie Quitter, the comedian started ripping on Stern, saying that he doesn't like how his comedy has changed from being more brash and abrasive to being more celebrity friendly, but then somehow he got into ripping on James Corden as well, since he was a guest on Howard's show not too long before this episode of Artie's podcast. The comedian started making comments about James saying, quote, "When James Corden opens his fat effing mouth to do karaoke in a car, something that wouldn't be effing funny to the secretaries at an accounting firm, and gets an Emmy for it, I'm allowed to say that he sucks." End quote. Those were some harsh words for someone who I don't think has ever been personally associated with, so I guess this is just him projecting his anger onto James, but the bottom line here is that he's certainly not a fan. At number 5, Liam Gallagher. I think that the one thing that James Corden is best known for is his carpool karaoke segment on his late night show. Over the series of episodes he's done, he's sung with everyone from One Direction to Adele to Migos and more. But even though the show reaches out to many artists, some of them have refused to participate in the segment, like Liam Gallagher, for example. Liam is the former singer for the band Oasis, and he told GQ magazine back in 2017 about how he was invited to film an episode of Carpool Karaoke with James Corden, and he flat out refused. Going more in depth into why he refused, Liam said, quote, "No thank you very much, no effing chance, mate. With that fat bloke from Kevin and Perry, James Corden is a knobhead," end quote. Clearly he doesn't like James very much, but no one really knows why. Maybe it's personal, or maybe he just doesn't like James's vibes or something. Either way, carpool karaoke with Oasis is never gonna happen. At number 4, Asia Argento and Rose McGowan. Sometimes it seems as though James Corden has trouble reading the room. Yes, he is a comedian, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be constantly cracking jokes, because there is an appropriate time and place for comedy, and you have to be mindful of that. James's lack of respect for the Me Too movement is the reason why Asia Argento and Rose McGowan hate James Corden so much, because after he made jokes about Harvey Weinstein at the height of his public takedown, they never saw him the same way. Back in 2017, James was hosting a black tie event for AIDS research where he did a little comedy monologue that seriously fell flat. He made several jokes about Weinstein, saying things like, quote, "This evening is so lovely that Weinstein already invited it up to his room for a massage," and quote, "It's been a weird week, hasn't it, watching Harvey Weinstein in hot water. Ask any of the women who watch him take a bath, it's weird watching Harvey Weinstein in hot water." Two Hollywood stars who were heavily involved in exposing Weinstein for his crimes, Asia Argento and Rose McGowan, took serious offense to James's jokes, and they had some harsh words for him, calling the comedian an effing piglet and saying, quote, "Shame on this pig and everyone who grunted with him," end quote. There are just some things that you shouldn't joke about, and the situation with Weinstein was certainly one of those things. At number 3, Pierce Brosnan. You know when you meet someone who just rubs you the wrong way? Well, this is apparently how Pierce Brosnan felt about James Corden, because they had a run-in at a concert one time and it seemingly wasn't a pleasant experience. During an episode of The Late Late Show in 2017, James Corden spilled the tea about a celebrity that he thought was rude during their segment of Spill Your Guts or Fill Your Guts. That night's guest, Khloe Kardashian, asked James about his worst experience with a celebrity, and James told the viewers about a run-in that he had with Pierce at a concert while with his wife. James said, quote, "I went to see U2 and Pierce Brosnan was there with some friends, and they left halfway through the gig to go off, so me and my wife moved into this area, and literally this arm went on here and pushed me out of the way. I looked at him like that, and he didn't even glance at me," end quote. So basically, Pierce left his section for a bit and James moved in, but when Pierce got back, he shoved James out of the way. There was never really an explanation as to why Pierce shoved James, but clearly he just doesn't like the guy. You don't always have to have a reason, but I just wonder what prompted Pierce to do that. At number 2, Patrick Stewart. While at an award show back in 2010, Patrick Stewart exchanged some quips with James Corden and really dug into the way that he was presenting at the show that evening. James was hosting the 2010 Glamour Women of the Year award, and when Patrick took the stage, he took the opportunity to criticize the way James had been hosting, where he said, quote, "When the presenters are up here and when the recipients are receiving their awards, don't stand at the back of the stage with your hands in your pockets, looking around as though you wish you were anywhere but here," end quote. James tried to quip back, saying that the people accepting the awards should just hurry up. Then Patrick replied saying, quote, "From where I was sitting, I can see your belly, and that was right there at the back of the room." To which James then replied saying, quote, "You can see my belly and we can all see you dying right now," end quote. It was just a really messy back and forth situation, but you could kind of tell that Patrick was frustrated with James and that he just really doesn't like him very much. And finally, at number 1, Hollywood. Now I know this isn't necessarily a celebrity, but I would argue that much of Hollywood doesn't like James Corden. Though yes, he's getting booked for a lot of roles these days, a lot of movie critics have some harsh words for the comedian. One of the most recent negative criticisms that James received from a number of sources came from his performance in the movie Prom. A lot of people didn't like his portrayal of the character, and many took offense because of the way the character was played, because James seemed to have laid into a lot of gay stereotypes while in character. On top of that, James has been criticized for other roles like his character in the movie Cats, and even his hosting of the Friends reunion. There are a lot of people who think that he's just doing the absolute most in Hollywood, and it's not good, so a lot of people just don't like him for that.
At number 10, we have Rose McGowan. Now, back in October 2017, Rose McGowan slammed James Corden after he made some pretty serious and sensitive jokes about a disgraced film producer. When James made the unwise joke during his monologue as the host on the Ambar Gala Los Angeles, James went on to say, "It was a weird week watching the disgraced film producer be in hot water," and then he went on to ask the audience if any woman in the crowd would watch him take a bath. Rose was not only disgusted with the audience for cheering on the comedian, but she was extremely disappointed with James Corden for making fun of someone who hurt a lot of women. Rose went on to say in a series of tweets where in one she called James Corden a Mother King piglet, and in another one she said, "Hearing the roars and laughs shows exactly what kind of Hollywood you are." James would later come out with an apology and would acknowledge that his joke wasn't right and he was sorry for anyone he offended. However, James should have known better than to shed light on such a hurtful situation. At number 9, we have Halle Berry. Halle Berry is said to be one of the sweetest actors in Hollywood, so it makes you question what James might have done to get on her bad side. With the actress appearing on TBS Drop the Mic show with James, let's just say it got a little heated between the two stars. James would open up the show by mocking the star for her box office flop in the movie Catwoman. Halle then responded by acknowledging Catwoman tanked, but she took Kingsman to the Mother King bank. The two would continue to spit back and forth with each other. With James's jokes being demeaning, Halle was quick to come to the battle to get the crowd to chant her name and won. But this wouldn't be the last of the two to work together. When Halle made an appearance on James's game show Spill Your Guts or Fill Your Guts, the star would then go on to eat an unnamed animal body part to avoid answering a question. Now, if I had to eat some weird body part off an animal, I would probably refuse to work with the star ever again. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. At number 8, we have Pierce Brosnan. So this feud has had some pretty sour moments. During a game, James' show Spill Your Guts or Fill Your Guts, James recalled a time where Pierce was rude to him at a U2 concert. During the game, James was asked if a celebrity has ever been rude to him at a party. Corden spoke of a time he attended the same U2 concert as Pierce. Now, Pierce was there with friends and they decided to leave halfway through the concert. James went on to note that he and his wife moved into the area that they were in, and Pierce went to push him out of the way when he came back. James went on to say the star didn't even acknowledge James and that he just continued to head back to his area. James then labeled him as the rudest celebrity alive. If someone called me rude after stealing my spot, I probably wouldn't want to work with them either, but at the same time, I certainly wouldn't have pushed them out of the way. Now, Pierce never talked about the incident, so who knows if it was actually true. At number 7, we have Patrick Stewart. Now, in 2010 at the Glamour Awards, James Corden was at the height of his career while he was hosting the event. However, Patrick Stewart was also present at the event, and he was tasked with presenting the category for Film of the Year. When he stepped up to do his role, Patrick would begin to tease the comedian for his body language throughout the event. Patrick would say, "I want to speak to James here." "It's James, isn't it?" James would then walk up to the star and the two had an epic stare down. While the star carried on with his critique, Patrick noted that when the presenters were on stage and the recipients were receiving their awards, James was standing in the back of the stage with his hands in his pockets, looking around like he wished he was anywhere but in the event. Now the two began to spit insults back and forth with each other until James made a pretty insensitive joke about Patrick's age. Well, all I can say is age doesn't define us, and sometimes it's better just to laugh at yourself than to overreact. Number 6, we have Liam Gallagher. Liam Gallagher once called James Corden a knob while stating why he would never join the star on Carpool Karaoke. In an interview with GQ magazine, Liam branded the star as a knob and mistaken him for starring in Gavin and Stacey. Liam was asked if he would ever consider doing Carpool Karaoke, and he refused by saying, "No thank you very much, not a chance mate," with that flat bloke from Kevin and Perry. Liam's girlfriend pointed out that the show he meant to say was BBC's comedy series Gavin and Stacey. Now, James starred in the show in 2007, and that's how he came to stardom. Liam then notes he never watched the show and he doesn't have to watch it in order to know he won't like it. Now, the two did seemingly make up just in time for Liam to play on James Corden's show back in October of 2017. But who knows how long the two will stay on good terms, as Liam once said he likes his potatoes roasted. At number 5, we have Jack Allison. Jack Allison used to write for Jimmy Kimmel Live back in 2010. The writer would then tell a story on Twitter in 2019 about the time he went to a union meeting that James Corden also attended. Jack noted the WGA meeting was only for the late night writers. However, James Corden showed up with none of his staff to advocate a lower pay grade for the writers, which meant James made a special trip to ask a trade union to allow him to decrease the salaries of his employees at the late night show. Jack explained that James wanted to hire writers' assistants and he wanted to give the assistants a chance to be there, and that's why there would be a lower pay grade for them. James would then later say he never wanted to pay the writers less than they deserved. However, Jack would tweet out later to deny the comedian's claims and said, "I said what I said and it was accurate." At number 4, we have Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is known for his ruthless and hilarious comedy pieces. It didn't surprise anyone when we found out the star would take on James Corden on the show Drop the Mic. Now, when the two finally did take the stage, the insults definitely came spewing out and both needed ice for the burns they were about to receive. James took a jab at Kevin's height and even brought out a little white stool to get Kevin to stand on. When it was finally Hart's turn to take the stage, he definitely came in with the heat by telling James that he may be small, but his bank account was big. The star then went on to say, people are nice to his face, but when they get home, he's not the comedian they wanted to see. Let's just say this battle was not a disappointment, and it proves that our height does not define us. At number 3, we have Britney Spears. Britney Spears once said carpool karaoke with James Corden was extremely awkward. And the video shows us it truly was. In an interview, Britney said the show was fun and James was extremely nice. However, she found her overall experience awkward. Britney noted that sometimes she would have to tell the star that she didn't want to hear the song again, and it was cut out of the video. One of the songs she asked him not to play again was, of course, Hit Me Baby One More Time. Britney said he just kept playing them. And then he put on a wig, and Britney felt like she had to go along with it because he was so nice, but she was really embarrassed throughout the whole process. Safe to say you probably won't catch Britney in a car with James again. At number 2, we have Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey almost refused to sing a song on Carpool Karaoke. When the singer showed up for her segment, she said she had no idea she had to sing. Mariah was signed on James's first episode, but there was one catch: she was refusing to sing. James said she came out and said, "I'm not singing today." James, being completely understanding, said he would drive around and they would just have a chat. While struggling to initially secure even a fifth-rate act for the show, James was excited to sign Mariah Carey. So when on the drive, he said to himself, this is carpool karaoke, so without the singing, it wouldn't be the show he wanted. So the star decided to sing to Mariah, so at least it was still on the show. Luckily for James, Mariah would change her mind and would sing along to a number of her greatest hits with the comedian. In the number 1 spot today, we have Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams once walked out of carpool karaoke, and how he did it will definitely leave you laughing. Bryan was invited onto the Best of 80s carpool karaoke segment, which would be in honor of the Back to Future anniversary. Now, James would note during a game of Spill Your Guts or Fill Your Guts that he didn't think Bryan's management's team told Bryan it was sort of a collaboration with lots of other singers from that time period, because when the star walked in and saw the list of other people and saw he was going to be working with James Corden, he walked out of the building and bolted to his car. Bryan was never heard from or seen from on the set again. He just bolted and was gone, which makes you wonder Who was on that list to make him bull, or was it just James Corden? Starting off our list today in the number 10 spot, we have The Final Destination. In an interview with Deadline, James would tell the media outlet that he has been considering leaving the show for a while now, before noting, "It's a really hard decision to leave because I'm so immensely proud of the show." James then told the news outlet that he was excited that he would be extending his contract for another year, as he always thought he would do the show for around 5 years and then leave. But when he stayed on, this is when he really started to think about how it was possible that there could be more adventure for him out there in the world. Later, James would even reveal in an episode on The Late Late Show that he had to break the news, and he said, "When I started this journey, it was all going to just be a journey, an adventure. I never saw the show as my final destination, and I never wanted this show to overstay its welcome in any way. I always want to love making it, and I really think in a year from now, that will be a good time to move on and see what else might be out there." With there still being a lot of things that James wants to do in life, like writing, he held back on doing this for a long time because he was terrified, but now he realized that being terrified of what may happen is why he at least needs to try it. Number 9. Family. When the actor first revealed during an appearance on the Drew Barrymore show that a conversation with his son Max is what led him to quit the late night show and move back to the UK with his family, when he said, "I was filming on a Sunday and I came down the stairs. It was about 6 a.m. and my son, who was 10 at the time, was sitting on the stairs and he said, 'Are you working today?' And I said, 'I am.' His son then went on to say, 'I thought, well, it was Sunday,' before James said, 'I know, buddy, the schedule's just all over the place.' James then went on to talk to Max, and this is when he noticed that his son's face dropped. That's when he decided to get out of the car and tell his wife that he realized they only had 6 more summers with his son and he didn't want to miss out on spending another moment without him. James then went on to tell Drew, 'So really, the choice was to go. Well, if I really want to do this other work, that cannot be at the expense of our children or family, and that is really all it comes down to.' It's actually kind of sweet that James wants to leave his busy life to spend more time with his family, and I wish nothing but the best for him in the future." Hey my little sunshines, are you liking this video so far? If so, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you never have to miss out on what I might just cover next. And trust me, the next video is filled with so much tea that you don't want to miss out on it. So subscribe to the channel. Number 8. Stephen Colbert. With James walking away from the Late Late Show, many people are wondering if he's actually choosing to walk away willingly, or is he just taking the high road so he doesn't ruin his reputation any more than he has. However, in the wake of all the conversations, everyone is wondering what might just happen to the Late Late Show and who's going to replace James. Well, now it has been reported that the Late Late Show, as it is known as, will itself end with James walking away. But with saying that, CBS plans to reboot the Comedy Central game show at midnight, and in its place, Stephen Colbert, who hosts CBS flagship late night talk show, The Late Show, will reportedly be producing the revival. However, Chris Hardwick, who hosted the original show at midnight, is not expected to have a connection to the upcoming show, with the original show airing from 2013 to 2017 until Chris was accused of some pretty serious allegations. It makes sense to why the show wouldn't bring him back on. And it makes you wonder, is Stephen Colbert replacing James? Number 7. Persistent rash. For many viewers who tune into CBS to watch any late show, when it comes to James Corden's show, many of them find themselves tuning out for the night, as James has a tendency to just get under people's skin. And in the process, he just refuses to go away. And while it's funny to watch James get on the nerves of so many people, it's just shocking that this is what he's turned to in order to get views. As early on in his career in America, he was once this lovable Brit, but over time his brand has become increasingly tarnished, thanks to a number of well-publicized incidents, which have led many people to perceive James as being arrogant and lacking an artistic judgment and talent. James first entered into the spotlight in the UK in a popular and critically acclaimed BBC sitcom Gavin and Stacey, which James co-wrote and starred in. And then in the US, he would become better known as the lovable late-night talk show host of The Late Late Show with James Corden. However, his overall output has pretty much become patchy, to say at least. With there being numerous movies and TV appearances that critics have labeled as being complete flops, he's also been in a number of alleged incidents in his private life, which have also caused many to question whether his friendly public image is an accurate representation of a real man. Number 6. Clashes with other celebrities. For someone who wishes to project an immaculable image to the public, James Corden hasn't exactly lived up to his full potential, as he has had his fair share of feuds and fights with other celebrities over the years. In many cases, he's not even really emerged from the conflict looking good, and many people have ended up siding against Corden in the process, with big name celebrities such as Ricky Gervais, Liam Gallagher, and Rose McGowan being some of the many celebrities who have clashed with Corden. Perhaps his most concerning fallout happens to be with Patrick Stewart, which happened in 2010 after Patrick expressed his frustration and criticized James for being disrespectful to award winners when he was presenting a show. While it could be argued that the celebrity world is competitive and a catty place, James has also faced a number of jokes and comments made about his weight and size, and that's probably why he thinks it's okay to push boundaries every now and then. Number 5. Terrible roles. In the beginning, James Corden's career started out pretty well, with his role as Smithy in the award-winning BBC show Gavin and Stacey being popular in his home country. Things would soon start to go downhill as Corden grew to fame. He then appeared to accept every work offer that came his way without much consideration, and this resulted in him having multiple flops. These include some truly awful movies such as Cinderella, The Prom, The Emoji Movie, and perhaps James' most cringeworthy performance yet came from the movie Cats. Despite James saying he didn't regret his involvement, he would later admit that it was unlikely that he would ever watch the film himself, which is insane because as an artist, you need to own your own work and love it and embrace it. Now, with James being a famous actor, he's going to face plenty of failures as well as successes. As far as Cats goes, a lot of stars had their reputations tarnished through their participation in the movie, so it wasn't actually that bad of a role that would have hurt his ratings. But it could be why he's taking a step back from the spotlight for a while. Number 4. Bad taste in humor. James' fondness for publicity and attempts to be funny at times have caused the star to become stuck in some pretty deep holes, as he has an awful habit of failing to read the room with his poor joke choices. And many of his jokes have been known to fall flat or cause openly negative reactions. Perhaps his worst failure was when James was the master of ceremonies at a research benefit gig in Los Angeles back in 2017. And while hosting the event, he caused some outrage after he made an apparent effort to appear edgy. He decided to bring up a disgraced film producer's scandal and made a series of insensitive jokes about the disgraced movie director's crimes. Later, James did come out to apologize for his lack of empathy when he said, "I was not trying to make light of Harvey's inexcusable behavior." He then went on to say he wasn't trying to shame anyone that Harvey hurt, but he was most likely just trying to shame Harvey. Either way, the joke just wasn't appropriate to make in any setting, and it still receives a lot of negative criticism to this day. So James could be walking away to have more time to focus on the hurt he has caused so he can do better moving forward. Number 3. Advertising. When James made an appearance in a TV commercial for a car insurance ad for Britain television, in the commercial, James can be seen clearing a path through a flock of sheep that are blocking a country road in a scene that's pretty reminiscent of Moses parting the Red Sea. At the end of the ad, he even went on to declare himself to be the sheep whisperer. While the ad definitely had potential to be something great, many people who have watched the advertisement have stated that no matter how many times they see it, the commercial fails to be amusing or entertaining, and if anything, it just continues to irritate people every time it comes on the television screen. All the bad press surrounding the ad also had James confess that even he has fallen into his own hype and realizes that he can be a little too much at times. So maybe he's just taking a step back so he can escape the public eye and get away from doing things that could ruin his reputation any further. Number 2. Fake persona. While James Corden's public image of a lovable Brit has been cute to watch on TV, his behavior in private has been described by some as being less than desirable. The nice guy public persona has worn thin, and there are too many cases where the mask has slipped to reveal a more arrogant and spiteful side of him. James' behavior has increasingly gained him a reputation that pictures him to be a bad guy, as he's been caught on numerous occasions behaving badly towards the people that work for him. And one allegation made by a writer, comedian, and podcaster, Jack Allison, was when Corden attended the Writers Guild Associating meeting campaigning specifically to advocate for lowering the pay of late night writers. In numerous occasions, James has even been caught behaving badly at restaurants, and these comments have been emerging over the last couple of years from both servers and other customers. Also, let's not forget that there was also an alleged incident on a plane where he allegedly behaved so antisocially, and he's never really been able to come out and apologize for any of his actions. Number 1, the carpool karaoke. Carpool karaoke has become such a self-indulgent segment of James Corden's talk show, so it deserves a special mention. With the fact that James has taken the time to drive around and buddy up with popular celebrities to point out they scream and sing their favorite songs. Sometimes the whole thing just comes off as being very staged, and from time to time it also has sort of this artificial feel to it. It also doesn't help that behind the scenes no one is actually driving the car. It's really just being towed around town. With Adele being featured in the final carpool karaoke episode, making us all cry as she wakes up James Corden to bring him to his final show, it would show that James really relied on Adele to help him not only deal but fix all the backlash he received in LA over his rude behavior in the final carpool karaoke episode.
Number 10, crosswalk karaoke. James is a multi-talented performer, priding himself on his singing abilities and acting chops. So of course it would make sense he wanted to add a bit to his series called Crosswalk the Musical. In this bit, Corden would invite his guests to learn a brief musical number for various musicals like Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast. Now what's the twist? Well, they would perform the number in the middle of rush hour traffic in Los Angeles. In between the shifting lights, they would just stand in front of stopped traffic and have dozens and dozens of people dancing and singing in the streets. Now kudos to the editing team on Late Night. The bit is usually well done and the audience is usually pretty into it. Camera footage from multiple drivers exposed that the reality was the actors were lip singing but also like yelling the lines, and they would take their sweet time getting out of the way of traffic due to the amount of film equipment as well as just the sheer volume of people on the freeway, to the point where in one instance James was actually hit by an impatient driver. They were doing La La Land at the time, but I really wish they had been doing Cats. That image would just be hilarious. Number 9, short temper. Fans will recount nothing but good times for the Late Late Show. The host is so bubbly and happy-go-lucky. What would he even look like angry? Well, unfortunately, the staff of Balthazar, a small French restaurant in New York City, witnessed firsthand the wrath of Corden when his wife accidentally was served a salad and an egg yolk omelet with just a little bit of white accidentally mixed in. He had it sent back, shouting at the waiters, only for the dish to return fixed, but it now had a side of fries instead of salad, and for some reason he was furious about that. Like, if someone took a salad away from me and brought me a plate of french fries, I'd be stoked. Now, he went on a tangent, reportedly causing the server to have some sort of panic attack and they needed to be replaced. And on top of that, the owner of the restaurant, Keith McNally, then publicly banned James from ever entering his store again, claiming he was the most abusive customer to his Balthazar servers that he has seen since the restaurant opened its doors 25 years ago. Corden later apologized for the incident and was invited back, but as a former server, I can safely say there is always going to be just a little bit of egg whites in your omelet from now on. Just a little. Number 8. Lies detected. Now, in one of the show's more popular bits, Late Late Lie Detector, Corden asks his guests to hook up to a lie detector test and answer a series of questions on air. During one segment of this bit, in which guest Kris Jenner is hooked up to the line when she is asked about her involvement in producing a certain tape, if you know, you know. She was quick to roll her eyes and shake her head and said, no, no, no. And then the expert gave a resounding, true. Case closed, right? No. Not even close. Because the next day, Kim Kardashian's ex-boyfriend Ray J blasted the show, calling the segment fake, claiming that the man giving the test, John, was underqualified. Going on to call the network sad for allowing the segment to be aired and threatening to sue Corden and the show itself. A little digging was done and it turned out that there were some truths to these claims, as John's LinkedIn profile revealed that he had attended a number of unspecified lie detector academies, which sounds made up enough, but it also says that he has a bachelor's in law, but that he didn't actually finish the course. If you need further proof that this man in question was a phony, well, Kris responded to the question, who's your favorite host? With, of course, James Corden, and the man once again gave just a monotone, true. Number 7. Asian Food Petition. The Late Late Show features a segment called Spill Your Guts, where guests either have to answer difficult questions or eat the disgusting foods presented to them. While the foods that are presented to the guests are meant to be off-putting and encourage them to answer the questions as an alternative, many of the foods are actually popular dishes from various Asian cultures. He presented foods like balut, century-old eggs, and chicken feet, mixed in with items like fish eggs and animal excrement. Corden would openly call the food horrific and disgusting, inciting outrage from many fans and inspiring a petition to begin on change.org. They wanted to have the segment wiped entirely from the program. And after over a month of petitioning, the Late Late host responded, saying that they would no longer be using any Asian foods on his show ever again. Number 6. Patrick Stewart. Sir Patrick Stewart is best known for his performance as Charles Xavier in the X-Men franchise, but he's also well known for being a sweetheart. At the Glamour Awards several years ago, he was presenting an award when a certain Late Show host was spotted backstage. Stewart tells the audience that Corden was backstage with his hands in his pocket, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. And of course, Corden ran out on stage to defend himself, telling Stewart that he couldn't have been more wrong, which prompted Stewart to make a joke about seeing James's tummy from across the stage. This caused James to get right up in Patrick's face and demand him to explain the punchline, and of course he was immediately asked to leave the stage. Many speculate that something like this must have been planned, but so far there hasn't been any proof or evidence suggesting that this was staged. This took place well before his restaurant fiasco, so it showcased just how bad and short-tempered Corden really can be. Number 5. Demi Moore's book. Spill Your Guts makes a brief return on this list, because in 2019 Corden invited Moore on the show to promote her new memoir entitled Inside Out. During the Spill Your Guts segment, Moore asked Corden, "In the green room, you said you loved my book. What part specifically was your favorite?" Now Corden paused and fumbled, saying, I love the part about the drugs. And he then caved and admitted that he actually didn't read the book. But he did love the pictures, so that's gotta count, right? As a Late Late host, you don't have to read every single book or watch every movie or TV show that's put in front of you, but at least be upfront about it. He apologized for lying and said that he just wanted her to feel better before eating a big ol' spoon of cow blood and pork tongue jelly. Yummy. The only reason this lie was ever exposed was because of the segment, but you gotta wonder, how many other guests have been told what they've wanted to hear over the years? What else has he really not seen or read? I don't know, comment your ideas down below. Number 4. Carpool Karaoke. One of Corden's most famous late night bits, Carpool Karaoke, where James invites a celebrity guest to sit in his car, drive around the city, and sing familiar and top charting songs. Sounds wholesome, right? No, you're wrong. After a photo surfaced online in 2018, evidence showed that James was actually never driving the cars during this segment, and that they were simply carted around town on a trailer. Not only does this mean that James was lying about the bit, but anyone who got into his car was lying too. Honestly, I think he should have just been forward about this from the beginning. It actually would have added a new comedic level to the bit, knowing that famous people were being pulled around in what was essentially a $40,000 wagon. Now he claims the trailer is for safety purposes, but hey man, if you can't drive and sing at the same time, are you actually living? Number 3. Soap slander. Hollyoaks is one of British television's most popular soap operas, airing in the early evenings on Channel 4 since 1995. In the early days of his career, James actually appeared in a single episode of this show and used that footage to help launch his future career. Now, proudly placing the role on his resume for years, his lies were revealed when during an interview on The Late Late Show many years later, he took the opportunity to bash the show, saying that he'd rather die than return for another episode, and that it was absolutely awful. He claimed that the cast were filled with a quote, chicken in a basket like sense of fame, and that they would always talk about moving to LA. Like, hey man, what's your problem? People can't have dreams? Ricky Whittle, best known to American audiences for his work on The 100 and American Gods, played constable and nightclub operator Calvin Valentine on the series from 2006 to 2011, and was very quick to defend the series and dish out some verbal knowledge of his own, reminding Corden how childish it was to be slandering a series that essentially gave him a career. He then joked about not knowing who James played in James's own series Gavin and Stacey, being like, is he Gavin? Is he Stacey? Who knows? Personally, I don't. Number 2. The Prom. The prom hit Broadway in 2018 and earned 7 Tony Award nominations. The musical is about a bunch of narcissistic New York theatrical actors who use a small town controversy, which is that the high school in the town won't allow a female student to take her girlfriend to prom, as a cause to cynically embrace and promote themselves. The film version was released in 2020 and starred a stacked cast, including Meryl Streep, Nicole Kidman, and look, it's James Corden. Corden was ecstatic about his performance and made sure to let everybody know just how proud he was. Unfortunately for him, that pride quickly turned to shame as critics began slamming his performance. You see, Corden plays Barry Glickman, possibly the most self-absorbed of the New York contingents. The character is also openly gay, while Corden is not, and his interpretation of the role was iffy. He continuously leaned into gay stereotypes, performing what many in the industry called gay face. Despite the negative receptions, Corden was nominated for a Golden Globe, but the award ultimately went to Sacha Baron Cohen for his performance in Borat 2. Very nice. Number 1, show me the money. Talk shows are simple. You get a few cameras together in a nice studio with a solid band and some furniture, and you've got a show. However, most talk shows don't include extravagant bits like street performing and singing in a trailer car thing hybrid. They may be able to put it together and make us believe that everything is good, but this stuff costs a lot of money. You gotta pay cast, crew, catering, and Corden himself reportedly made over $5 million a year on the program, which is a lot considering the show has had a regular budget of $65 million a year, but has consistently only brought back $45 million in revenue. The only way the show was ever going to be able to stay on the air was if Corden himself partook in a multi-million-dollar pay decrease and had brutal staff reductions. So instead, he opted to just cancel the show entirely, which would be one thing if it was his show, but this was the Late Late Show. It's been around since 1995, first being hosted by Tom Snyder. He's taking away something he didn't even create, and now, instead of only some people losing their jobs, everybody loses their jobs. I don't know, A for effort, I guess.